Initially, I was gonna post a longer video speaking on the overturning of the conviction for Bill Cosby, but I'm not gonna do that. I'm just gonna post something a little bit shorter and straight to the point. Ultimately, the main reason that resulted in Bill Cosby's conviction being overturned is simply his constitutional rights were violated, plain and simple. So no matter how you feel about Bill Cosby, whether you feel he was innocent or whether you feel he was guilty, doesn't matter. The end result is he ultimately had his conviction overturned because his constitutional rights were violated. And in specific, his Fifth Amendment rights. That's the one that deals with self incrimination. So if you have a former DA make a promise to a defendant and say, hey, look, if you agree to do this, then we're not going to charge you now and we're not going to charge you in the future. Well, the defendant is relying on that promise that you made in order to do what it is that you expect them to do for you. So in Cosby's case, the former DA Bruce Castor basically said, hey, look, if you sit for this civil deposition and give your testimony, which involves him waiving his Fifth Amendment rights to self-incrimination, hey, we won't charge you now and we won't charge you in the future. So when Cosby agrees to that, he's agreeing to that under the guise that, hey, this DA, who is the top law enforcement official of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, he's relying on that particular promise. So he goes ahead and sits for the civil deposition. So he's not thinking that over 10 years later that the successor of that prior DA is then going to come back and say, hey, the promise that this previous DA made was null and void. We're not going to honor that and we're going to charge you anyway. That's you can't do that, because if ultimately Cosby knew that whatever testimony that he gave during the civil deposition was going to later be used against him criminally, then he could have simply said, hey, look, no, that's okay. I'm not going to sit for that. Because if you really want to look at it, the DA at that time really didn't have nothing on Cosby. I mean, the case was so shaky. The reason why he made the promise to Cosby in the first place is he knew he could not take Cosby to trial and win. He definitely was not confident in that. So that's the reason why he came to Cosby and say, hey, look, if you sit for this, we're not going to charge you now and we're not going to do it later. So you can't then, your DA office over 10 years later, come back and say, okay, well, F the deal that was made by the previous DA. We're just going to go ahead and charge you anyway. And then we're going to use the testimony that you gave in that civil deposition against you criminally. You can't do that, because that's a violation of that person's constitutional Fifth Amendment rights to self-incrimination. So just wanted to go ahead and point that out to you guys. It doesn't have anything to do with Cosby's perceived wealth, status, or power, or, it has nothing to do with that. Ultimately, it boils down to his conviction was overturned because his constitutional rights were violated. And I see that happening with R. Kelly right now. Anytime you engage in a situation where the accused is having his or her constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial violated, and is clearly documented, and that person ends up being wrongly convicted because of that, that's an appealable issue. And any just appeal judge, if they're doing the right thing and if they're doing their job the way that they're supposed to do it, they would overturn that conviction because of whatever reason, whichever constitutional right for that person was violated. So it has nothing to do with whether this person is truly innocent or whether they're guilty. It's about, was this person given a fair trial? Was this person's constitutional rights upheld and not violated? If you violate them in the course of getting a conviction for that particular defendant, then that's an appealable issue, and rightfully it should be, if they are convicted, they should be overturned, or it should be overturned, that wrongful conviction. Okay, I'm out.